What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. I have a very, very great guest in the house tonight, man. One of the best coaches in VA, the two-time state champion, Coach Honore, Coach Keith Honore, a great basketball mind. I've had the honor and privilege to get to know him the last 7 months in our coaches group, and I'm just been impressed with just listening to him talk, share his insight. So I had to get him on to talk on the Vicktory Legacy Spotlight. We're going to talk about his legacy and just all the great things he's accomplished, as well as some of the things, he's learned about himself as a man, as a father, as a coach. So, Coach, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks. I appreciate you having me. We as coaches, we don't usually get an opportunity to share our story. And I saw some of the pieces you've done in the past. I think you're doing a great job. You're doing a phenomenal job of getting everybody's story out there. And I just want to say thank you, to you and Vicktory Life for having me here tonight.
Awesome, man. No, thank you, Coach. I'm honored to have you on. It's cool, man, because as I mentioned you as we got ready for the interview, I knew who you were. I knew of you, had seen you coach and heard other people talking about you, seen you coach against friends of mine, Troy Bands, LC Bird, Eric Brown at Hampton High, seen those state championships. I live in Northern Virginia now, so I was like, wow, I got to get him on. So you on, and we're going to talk about your legacy. So we know you as a state championship coach, district coach of the year, regional coach of the year. You have produced some talented players, but I want to talk about you. We're going to talk about your legacy and when it started for you. Where you from? Where did you grow up at? And talk about your childhood and the things you experienced that gave you the insight to do what you're doing now.
Born and raised Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Fortunately for me, I still have my mom and my dad, both still living, and they're back living in Louisiana. I moved to Northern Virginia, 1990. I had just finished my sophomore year in high school, it was devastating. It was devastating. I had to leave everything I knew and I loved back at home in Louisiana, and I moved to Northern Virginia. And, I had never been this far north in my life. And, my dad had fell on hard times, and, he had to do something for his family. And, thankfully, he made the wise decision to move us up here. We had a better life, he provided a better life for us. So I'm certainly thankful for that. And that was certainly something. It was a big moment in my life. I really learned a lot from that experience. And, at the time I thought, it was the end of the world. To move a kid in the middle of high school, it's tough, and you got 2 years of school left, and you had to make all new friends. And then I left my entire family behind. And that's important because I grew up around all of my family. I grew up on a street called Honore Lane.
Really?
Yes, it's a state street. You can look it up on a state map. It's still there today. I still have family living there today, but it's much of a shell of itself. I really grew up in a bubble. The only people I had around me on a daily basis were aunts, uncles, and cousins and grandparents. It was only our family on that street. We had a large family, but I grew up different. I grew up certainly grew up in a village. You say it takes a village. I was one of those kids that, we did something wrong. You got your butt whipped by the closest aunt or uncle that was there, and whoever caught you doing it, that's how you got your butt whipped. And then you had to go home and get your butt whipped again because your aunt or your uncle had to whip your butt. So I certainly grew up in the village, and I was surrounded. It was kind of weird. I had umpteen cousins, but no one was my age. I had cousins 6 years older than me or 4 years younger than me. For some reason, I was the only one that, my age. And I learned a lot. I was much more mature growing up all my life because I grew up around guys that were 6 years older than me. So, I used to get beat up. I used to get, embarrassed.
Dang.
The entertainment when things got boring. Um, but I love my family. I talk to those guys still to this day. A lot of those guys are inspiration to me. My grandmother, that's my heart. Rest, she's deceased, and I miss her dearly. But I learned a lot from her about service. Being of service to people,
Mm.
and how important it is to treat people with kindness and treat people with love. And she's a big influence on my life. And I didn't realize that till later on, growing up. But with her, it was all about service. She was she was the caretaker of the family, and she took care of so many people, and she was always very kind. Never had a mean thing to say about anybody, and I had a chance to speak at her funeral, and one of the things that I said about her that kind of described her was, Muhammad Ali said, "Service to others is our rent for being here on earth."
Mm.
And that was her. So she played a great influence in my life, and I have to say, my father, he's a man that with a very, very, very powerful work ethic. He believed in hard work. He didn't believe in handouts. He believed in you earn what you get. Whatever you get, that's what you earned. And so I grew up with some great people and some great influences, and I grew up in a great environment, and and here I am today. So that's kind of a little bit of my background on how I grew up, and kind of what shaped and molded me.
That's really awesome, man. I think I knew you were from down south, but hearing you tell us in your legacy spotlight is crazy because I forgot that, and I know how they do it down in Louisiana. I played in the Sugar Bowl back in the '90s,
Yeah,
and you know, the South, man, the food is real, the culture is real, and you guys, I'm from VA, the 757, but the South, y'all have athletes for days,
yeah, yeah,
and the competition is so real, man. So coming from down there, having that family atmosphere, that Southern culture, the bond you
yeah.
had, the realness, coming to Northern Virginia, transient area, had to be not so much a culture shock, but very different. Um,
Oh no, it was a culture shock.
how did you
Yes.
adjust? How did you adjust?
Uh, it took time. Um, one of the things, there were just things where people down south, they're just friendly people by nature.
Hmm.
It's very slow moving. Nobody's in a rush. You can drive down the street. There are people sitting on their porch. They're going to wave and they're going to speak whether they know you or they don't. Here, when everything was in a rush. Everything was a rush. People weren't as friendly. Um, and it was a very diverse. This is a very Northern Virginia is very diverse.
Yeah.
I wasn't accustomed to that early on. There were some things like interracial relationships, like I'd never seen that before where I came from, and that as a 16-year-old kid, that really, that was profound for me because I didn't know how to handle that. Um, but like I said, it goes back to what my grandmother taught me that you know, her voice kept coming to my head. We love everyone. You love everyone.
Mm.
You love everyone. You treat everybody the same. So it quickly, I quickly adjusted. Because we're all people. We're all the same. And so I just wasn't used to seeing that. Where being from Louisiana, it was very segregated. Growing up.
I knew that. I did know that.
Yes, and still in some cases it's still that way.
Yep.
Uh, but I adjusted quickly. I had great friends. The first guy I met when I moved to Virginia is Rob Satchel. He's one of my assistant coaches. He's still, my friend to this day. He's like a brother to me. and so he helped the transition, made friends really, really quickly. And, so I adjusted, but it was a huge culture shock for me, definitely.
So, Coach, when you get here and you're adjusting, but you had that family support, and you've always been a man of resiliency, and you adjust even as you coach. One of the things I've heard and seen with you, what gave you outside of your family support and the few people you met as you transitioned? Was it sports? Was it academics? What gave you that peace of mind? Did you play football, basketball, track? What did you get into?
Believe it or not, it was sports because and you're gonna appreciate this. Um, I was a better football player than I was basketball player. I played
I,
football at Potomac. Yeah.
This is see now. This is getting crazy. You are the third coach who is up here as a basketball coach. Now
Mhm.
Sherman, Tony Bentley, and you. You are the third consecutive coach I've had on Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight who told
Mhm.
me how you guys were so great in football, which is true. And for me, I play football and basketball, but I love basketball way more.
Yeah.
My
Well,
passion's always been a basketball player.
there's a bit of misconception there. I never said I was good. I never said I was good. I just said I played football. Now, believe it or not, I was a better football player. I started both ways at Potomac. I was a starting wide receiver and starting free safety.
Wow.
Um, and I played on that team. I played on that team in 91 that lost in the state championship to West Potomac.
I
Um,
remember that when they played West
yes,
Potomac. Talk about that, man. That
yes.
team. That y'all had a really good team. Talk about that team.
So that team, I mean, that team we had some of the greatest athletes still to this day that I've seen. We had guys like Keith and Kevin McAfee, two linebackers that were all state. We had a running back in John Newsom. We had our offensive line was just phenomenal. Offensive and defensive line were just, very powerful guys. We had a guy that you probably know, guy by the name of Mac Morrell.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
His
tight end
son.
at Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I played. Matt Morrell was on that team, and he ended up playing at Virginia Tech. Um, just one of my highlights from that year is we were undefeated, first round of the playoffs, and we were playing EC Glass at home. We were down. Man, I think we were down 14 to 15. We were down by maybe a point or so, and I ended up catching a 65-yard touchdown to win that game. Um, and so we went on to make it to the state championship, and we were down. We were going in halftime. We were up 14-3 going into halftime. Came out. We ended up losing 15-14.
Mm.
And we tried to run that same play. That it was a halfback pass that we ran against EC Glass that was successful. We tried to run the same play against West Potomac, and it just didn't work out. So we ended up losing in the state championship, and that was one moment I'll always remember in my playing career. That hurt, man. I never cried so much in my life after losing that game, and I vowed some kind of way I'd always get back to a state championship game. I can't say my love was football. I was a pretty good baseball player as well. Um, my love has always been basketball. And the crazy thing about it is I never had aspirations of being an NBA player.
Really?
No, no. When I was in high school, I wanted to play college basketball, and I wanted to be a high school coach. As crazy as that may sound.
That does sound that I rarely ever hear that ever. I
Yeah.
mean, no matter what era, generation, it's NBA, NFL. I was gonna go play for the Cowboys, or I was a big Spurs fan, or Duke basketball. So for you, it was college, and so you're living your dream.
I'm living my dream, and living it more than I anticipated. You know, so for me, it was just I knew I wasn't the greatest athlete. I didn't have like this astronomical hops. I wasn't a 20-point night guy. I've always been my position on the team. I've always played point guard. I've always been the leader of the team. I was an old school point guard, pass first. I was the vocal guy. I was the leader. And so then I knew then that was something I wanted to do. And then fortunately for me, I was surrounded by some high level basketball. My high school coach in Louisiana is Kenny Allman.
Mm.
He's a Hall of Fame coach. He may be the all-time winningest coach in Louisiana now. State championship coach. So I had him for my first 2 years. Then I moved to Virginia and played for Kendall Hayes, who I replaced.
Yeah.
We all know Kendall over 400 games, state championship, multiple regional district championships. So I was able to play for him. And then I was Kendall's assistant for a long time. So I was prepared about as well as anyone could be prepared to be a high school coach. And I was truly blessed to be surrounded by such greatness, and such knowledge. So I've been fortunate, and it's obviously rubbed off on me a little bit. I've won a few games, so.
You won a few. You won a lot. We're sitting here talking with Coach Honore, Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight, two-time state champion. Coach, you and I are around the same age. We played in the 90s and the late 80s. And I consider that, I'm a little biased, but I'm also not a hater. There's some great kids and great players now, great sports. But I always feel like that was the golden era of sports. When you look at high school, collegiate sports and the NFL, NBA, and even track and field with women like FloJo and things of that nature. Talk about some people. You talked about your family's impact, your grandmother, God bless her soul, and your parents. Talk about players though. Like, for you, I've been dying to ask you this question because, you and I, we are part of a coaches group and we have conversations about life, but also players and other people we see on television. I know who doesn't like LeBron. I know who's the GOAT. But for you being a football and basketball player, with guys now kind of stick to one sport, who were some of the athletes you check for collegiately, professionally, who you were like, hey, man, this guy right here, I got to make sure I watch him.
Right. Well, believe it or not, growing up, this is kind of weird, and I don't know why, but it's still this way to today. People in Louisiana are big Georgetown fans.
Really?
Yes, I think John Thompson really recruited that area heavily, New Orleans, in the 80s and 90s. Like I think he recruited. He had some guys from Louisiana, so I think that might have something to do with it. But I was a huge Alonzo Mourning. I was a huge Alonzo Mourning fan and Shaquille O'Neal fan.
Mm.
I was fortunate enough to grow up around LSU. My high school coach at the time had a relationship with Dale Brown, so we had access to LSU basketball when they had Chris Jackson, which is now Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Yep.
Stanley Roberts, Shaquille O'Neal, Vernell Singleton, Ricky Blanton. I grew up around those guys in that era of basketball, and that was a really exciting team. So Chris Jackson, Shaquille O'Neal, Alonzo Mourning, all had an effect on me, and those are guys that I followed and I watched, and of course, for me, Michael Jordan. I just, what that guy was able to accomplish and the manner in which he would accomplish it. You hear the debate about who's greatest. I won't even debate it. Because the piece, they like to, everybody wants to match numbers and things of that, stats and things of that nature. But the piece that they said, and I said this probably 5 to 10 years ago, someone would come along and match Michael Jordan's numbers. Someone would come along and beat his numbers.
Mm-hmm.
No one will do it in the manner in which he did it. No one's going to have that effect that he had. It was just his mental approach to the game. He's being criticized for now, but I think the people that criticize him for that are probably people who just don't understand the sheer nature of competitiveness.
Absolutely.
being a true competitor and having what we call a competitive spirit, it takes a certain type of person.
Mm-hmm.
If you heard the lady, she just got a job at Duke. She's from West Spring, Carol Lawson.
Oh, yes. I just saw the video on her the other day. They were promoting.
Yes, Carol Lawson made a great point, and that I pointed out to our guys. She said, I can get you to work hard, but I can't get you to compete.
Mm.
We got to compete. Like, it takes a competitive spirit and a competitive person to compete. And I agree with that. And, and I just think, guys compete differently now. Let me just say that. And what Michael Jordan did, and I just think, he's in a class by himself. And I have great respect for LeBron. I have great respect for the humanitarian that he is. I have respect for him, what he's done basketball wise, but this ain't close.
Yeah. Just for the record, I agree, Coach. 100%. I mean, especially when I watched The Last Dance, and it took me back to that time frame. And even though I was there for it, I remembered, I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. Even that 88 season when he practically dominated the league and won every award. Just a special player. And, so Coach, you at Potomac, you actually transitioned where you wanted some great teams, play with some great players. So what was next for you? What was your college of your choice? What ended up happening? Because we're going to talk about your coaching career, but again, where did you go after your Potomac days were over?
I went to a little school in southwestern Virginia called Bluefield College.
I know exactly where that's at. I went to Virginia. I know, and I've never met anybody until now who went there.
I had a short stint there. It was a really bad situation. Coach there was just at odds with administration. My family at the time, my younger brother had just been diagnosed with testicular cancer.
Mm.
And so my family, we didn't have any money. I mean, my parents were paying for medical bills. It was just, we just didn't have it. I had to do college all on my own. And, I had gotten a situation where I was getting everything paid for. It was a great situation. Another culture shock. But
I believe it. Now that I know.
Yes, it was definitely a culture shock going there. But I was willing to stick it out because it was kind of my only option. And coach got fired. They brought a new coach in, and he wanted everybody to pay. And because he was trying to get guys out, get his guys in. So I had to leave that situation. I came back home, did some community college, started working, and then I started coaching with Kendall at Potomac. The year they won state championship was 1995. That was my first year I started coaching with him.
Yeah, and I was in the stands watching. I was at Virginia Tech then as a redshirt freshman. I watched y'all play. My alma mater, Hampton High.
Yes.
You guys had, and I remember watching. I had been in Northern Virginia, but obviously it was just a visit or spring break or visit friends. And then I moved up here in 2000. But I remember watching that Potomac team, and they were really talented. They were physical, and they played with an edge, but nothing disrespectful. It actually was like watching a team from Richmond or from Tidewater. And it was interesting, man. That had to be a great experience returning to your alma mater, and then you guys, being part of that staff and winning the state championship. Yeah. What do you remember about that team, that season?
Oh, just the sheer talent, just how good they were, how unselfish they were, and really, the stories I share about that team is how much those guys loved each other. Those guys that core group was from the same neighborhood right across the street from Potomac. They grew up, a lot of them were related, but they grew up playing on the same little sandy basketball court at a place called Georgetown Village.
I know exactly where it's at.
Yes, right across from Potomac. And, those guys are really different, man. It was something to appreciate, watching how disciplined they were. A lot of people, you wouldn't put discipline with the way that team looked, but they were extremely disciplined. They played extremely hard. the piece that I think a lot of kids miss today that they had, they played for each other. You know, they didn't just play with each other, they played for each other. They held each other accountable, and that's why you were able to get the product that you were able to get. And honestly, that's why we were able to go down there and beat Tidewater teams and Richmond teams, because that was kind of unheard of for a Northern Virginia team to come down and beat you guys. I mean,
Back then, especially, yeah.
Yes. You know, 757 had ran the state for years. And for us to come down and we beat Kecoughtan, I think in the state championship, we beat Indian River, I believe it was. And I think we beat Hampton. And, you know, it was just a really remarkable team. And arguably, and I got to be careful now. This is going to probably bleed into one of your other questions. Arguably, the greatest team at Potomac. Okay.
Well, yeah, and y'all have had some dogs, so it's coming from Coach's mouth, not mine. I can't speak on it anyway because I'm not a Potomac alumni. I'm a fan, and I'm just a fan of great teams and great organizations. And you guys definitely put out some great teams. That team was tough. We're gonna talk about your teams here in a second, but you know, one thing that we haven't talked about yet, Coach, and this is more of a serious question. You know, we as fans, as alumni, and even players, we don't know what you guys go through behind closed doors. Like you're coaching with a legend at Potomac, and then eventually you become his replacement. But we don't know about the hours of watching film, the calls from teachers, the IEP meetings, you know, the court appearances, the letters, you know, riding up Route 1 corridor looking for kids. Just talk about that transition from being the assistant to becoming the head guy, the obstacles you face, and the work you put in to earn, and I stress earn, that position. Talk about that, just, you know, how you got that.
Yeah, well, I can tell you nobody had a more tumultuous start than I did to my career. I can assure you that. First thing that happened was I had to replace a guy that retired on a 77 game winning streak. It went the last 3 years of his career at Potomac. He had 3 undefeated seasons, regular seasons, and I had to replace that. So I had nowhere to go but down, nowhere. Fortunately for me, I had a great mentor. My mentor happened to be my AD. He's the reason why, he's a major reason why I'm sitting here today and I'm able to tell this story, is because of the mentor I had, which we can talk about him a little later. But when I started the season, again, I had to follow a guy that was on a 77 game win streak. And my first practice, I remember this. I remember my first practice. We had half a team because the other team half was playing football, and they had made it to the state tournament, state playoffs.
Playoffs, yeah.
So I'm 30 minutes into my first practice as a head coach, and a mom walks in. I had 7 players. A mom walks in and said she needed to see 4 of the 7 players. I said, we're in the middle of practice. She said, it's coach. So I let him go outside for 2 minutes. I went outside and got him. Mom said, look at your coach and tell him what you did. 4 players got caught stealing, and the police were looking for them. So I had to let them go. So now I'm down to 3 players. Well, they kind of got that situation cleared up. You know, we handed out some discipline actions. We brought them back, and we're playing, and we get to we're 8-1. We're 9-1.
And what year is this, Coach? Just so
this was in 2006.
Okay.
My first year. We get to 9-1 somehow because I had to suspend guys and things of that nature, and I had football players missing. But we got to 9-1. We go into the Christmas tournament. I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I told my players, I said, listen, now's holidays. Go home and spend time with your family. You know, this is not a time to hang out. Go be with your family. I went home. I remember getting in the shower. My phone rings when I got out the shower. It was a young lady. She said, hey, coach, this is, you know, such and such. I got one of your players on the phone. So I said, hey, buddy, what's happening? He said, hey, coach, I'm in jail. he said, hey, coach, I'm locked up. I said, like in jail? He goes, yeah. I said, what happened? Coach, I got caught stealing. So it was a different set, got caught stealing right before our Christmas tournament. So a couple of guys I had to kick off the team because they were habitual offenders. A couple more guys I had to suspend. We won the Christmas tournament. So we're 12-1.
Despite all that?
Despite all that, we're 12-1. I come out of going into the new year. And just when you have situations like that, it ends up catching up to you. And it caught up to us toward the back of the season, and we just fizzled out. So that was my first season. My second season, everything's going okay. There was a robbery and a murder at local Popeyes. And so, it was all over the news because they killed the manager and robbed the place. Well, I get a call from my AD. He said, hey, listen, if the newspaper call you about the robbery and the murder at Popeyes, you direct them to the principal. I said, well,
wow.
I said, why would they call me? He goes, well, one of the players is being implemented as a suspect. I said, what? So he said, yes. So I said, okay. So not long after that player called me. And he said, hey, coach, they just arrested me, but I'm back home now. I said, well, what happened? He said, they arrested me for trespassing. I said, okay. He said, but they started asking me about a murder. He said, I don't know what they're talking about. So I said, well, we'll talk. Let's get off the phone. We'll talk about this later. So the next day, I get a call from the FBI. FBI says, coach, if you know something and you're not telling us, we're going to lock you up.
What?
Oh, it gets so.
It's just, I'm sorry, go ahead. It's just, this is crazy.
So this gets so much, man. So we go to practice. There's the FBI sitting in the parking lot. Every day we go to practice, there's an FBI sitting in the parking lot. So finally, they call and they're like, they started doing stuff like, hey, my AD would call. He said, hey, they may arrest your guy tonight in the middle of the game or after the game or before the game. So we're going into these games expecting this kid to be arrested. So meanwhile, the kid is contending. I have no idea what they're talking about. I have no clue what they're talking about, coach. So I'm like, okay. So long story short.
This is crazy.
They never arrested him. Come to find out, they thought he was a suspect because he had the same make and model car of the getaway car that happened during the robbery, and he had to do with it. So we went through an entire season dealing with the FBI. So that was my second season. So then it started to get on track. We battled through it, and then by my
hold on, coach. Hold on. You're not gonna just gloss over all that. You're not gonna gloss over all that. I'm sitting here thinking, okay. Because at that time I'm living up here. I've been in Northern Virginia since 2000. So, and I had clients in that Route 1 corridor area, and I remember the shooting. I remember some of the things. However, from a coaching standpoint, you weren't new to the game because you were an assistant, but it's different when you are that head coach. Everyone says, I can be a coach. When you're the head coach, it all falls on you. Yeah. I know you're not a quitter, and I know you as a man of integrity, and you're very resilient. But did it ever cross your mind when you were alone with your thoughts at night, when you were talking to God Almighty, or when you were just walking down the hallway, just say, you know what, man, I could probably get a job at Woodbridge High School or Fairfax, or look at Richmond. Did you ever rethink things with all that stuff going on your first 2 years?
I did. I questioned. Is this for me? I questioned. So many times I asked God, why me? All I want to do is coach basketball. That's all I want to do. But looking back on it and through this journey, I realized, had I not been there, it could have been different for those kids. I truly believe God had me there for so many reasons. One, for those kids, and two, for me. It taught me resiliency, like you said. It taught me how to be resilient. And then everything I dealt with after that, I was always able to put in perspective, you've been through much tougher than this. You've much. There's no defense a team can play. There's no player talented enough that's tougher than anything that you've ever dealt with, so you can beat them. That's my approach to everything, every situation, every team, every game. You've overcome, you know, things a lot tougher than Charles Faldon at LC Bird. You know, you've overcome things much tougher than DeMonte Buckingham at Henrico. So figure out a way to beat him. You can do it. And that was always, you know, my approach to it. You know, and that's how I was able to muster up enough energy and knowledge to you know, how are we going to beat these guys? Like you've overcame a lot. So that's kind of my approach to everything, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad, and I know many people over there and really throughout the state respect you and glad you stayed because you have now created a standard that has built on what you took over, where the expectation is championships, but you also are mentoring, taking care of a lot of young men. That's why I mentioned the stuff behind the scenes because people need to know, you know, you're not going to go on Twitter and talk about this. And I know you've been interviewed quite a bunch, but at the same time, you were just about focusing on your program and the standards you and your staff have set. With that being said, you get through those tumultuous first few years, and all of a sudden you start winning. You're starting to get your groove, put your stamp on that program.
Right.
When was that first moment, that first season after you took over? Was it that fifth year? When was that? Okay, this squad right here, you know, not the state championship team, but like when you were like, this team kind of set the standard for those state championship and regional final teams. What was there a year, a group of, was there a certain player, a captain, a moment?
I'd have to say probably 2010 is really when it started to click. I was coaching my oldest son, Brandon, and that's the year I won as a head coach my first district championship. You know, certainly one of the highlights of my career. I tell people, winning my first district championship with my son and winning my first state championship with my son is two memories I'll have with me forever. So, you know, 2010 is kind of when it kicked in gear. We had Justin Burrell played at Holy Cross, Tayron Gibson, who played at Pfeiffer, who then transferred to St. Augustine, a guy by the name of Jordan McCain, who Jordan, it was Jordan, and we won that district championship at Potomac, and that was our first. And then from there, I learned every year I learned something different, and that's really, to be honest with you, this is what I credit our winning for. Prior to 2010, I never did strength and conditioning.
Really?
Never. And 2010 was the first year I implemented strength and conditioning, and I'll tell you who our strength and conditioning coach was. It was a lady by the name of Anise Ginyard, and that name probably sounds familiar. Her son was Marcus Ginyard, who played at North Carolina.
I was okay, yeah, that's crazy.
So it was his mom, and she was phenomenal. I mean, and because my first 4 years, we always fizzled out at the end of the year. We would start really well and fizzle at the end of the year. And I started doing research, and everything was pointing to a lack of strength and conditioning. And we implemented that, and we finished strong. And then from 2010, we really got on a roll. You know, I think in the last 10 years, I think we won the district. We won the district tournament 8 out of the last 10 years, and we won the regular season 9 out of the last 10 years. So, you know, and it's a direct correlation of our strength and conditioning program, which we have a guy by the name of Chris Pellegrino now, who I played with at Potomac. He's our strength coach, and he has a PhD, you know, a master's. He has all that stuff in you know, in the whole strength and understanding the body and things of that nature. So that's when it really got on the roll for us, is in 2010. I think in 2011 or 2012, I made my first state tournament, and we won our regional, won the region. I think first year was maybe 2011, 2012, we won the regional championship for the first time. and we beat a team that was stacked in Osborne. Osborne was loaded. They had the 7-footer.
Yep, I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah.
Keep going. I remember that.
That team was loaded, and we had to go on the road to Osborne, and we beat them. We beat them at Osborne for the regional championship, and then we lost to Highland Springs in the state tournament. And I did some self-reflecting, and okay, why did we lose? What caused us to lose? And I started to realize, those guys in Richmond 757 are a different breed. We're going to have to, we can't focus on being the best in Prince William County. We have to now turn our attention to being the best in the state of Virginia. What's it going to take to be the best in the state of Virginia? And we changed our training. We changed how we trained. We changed our thought process. We tried to get our kids to think outside of the county rather than think in the county, because so often if you're the best in the county, well, that's your world. That's a teenager's world. His county is his world. But we had to get them to think a little bit broader and think on a bigger stage. And we did. We changed the culture, and we got those guys believing they were the best in the state. And then in came an extremely talented group. And my son, Keon, Randy Haynes, Trey Porter, Xavier Laws, Averill, like we were Tory Dixon, that group. And the great thing about it, I coached that group when they were 8, 9, 10, 11 in AAU. I had them as an AAU group.
That's so cool.
Here was the key. Here was the key to that. We won we probably won 3 or 4 state championships with that group in AAU, and that was unheard of. You don't go and win state championships over Tidewater in Richmond. Like, that was unheard of. And we won like in a row. And so when they got to Potomac, they were seeing the same guys that they had been beat when they were younger. So that intimidation factor wasn't there. And so that team, when I said earlier about the 95 team, arguably the greatest team at Potomac, that 2014 team is arguably the greatest team at Potomac as well. We were able to accomplish some things in 2014. Our average margin of victory was 20 points a game. And we beat we had to go, and unfortunately we lost to Wakefield in the regional championship at Wakefield. I still never forgave Tony for that. But we went down and we had to play Maury, who had to play Maury at Old Dominion, and they had the Coleman kid.
Well,
Texas.
Y'all played them down there?
Yes, at Old Dominion. And we ended up beating them. We ended up beating Maury, and it was supposed to be a clash. We were supposed to clash in the state championship, but we ended up losing and had to get on the road and go play them in the state semifinals. And we beat Maury at Old Dominion, which was huge. And then we had to turn around and play Henrico in the state championship. So that 2014 team really set the stage for the next 6 years.
Yes, it did.
Right. So, we graduated 9 of those guys, and our culture was set at that point. The culture was set. It was state championship or bust. That's all our kids think about. And so we graduated 9 of our 13 kids from that team. The thing that I'm most proud about that team is every single one of those 9 went to college. Every single one of them.
Excellent.
Every one of them. All 9 either went for football, either got a football scholarship, academic scholarship, or some sort of basketball scholarship. And that's the piece people don't really know about that team. So it was so many great things happened with that 2014 team, but that's the thing I'm probably the most proud of, to be honest with you. And of course, we got 2 pros from that team. Trey and Randy are now playing professional.
Yeah.
So we developed a culture there. It was a standard. The stage was set. This is who we are. This is who we want to be. So we graduated all those guys, but we had about 4 or 5 guys sitting at the end of the bench. The one guy we had returning was my son. And then we had about 4 or 5 juniors at the end of the bench. those guys come in and everybody's like, okay, this is the year we can get Potomac this year. We got it. Well, we had a transfer from Belgium, in which I got accused of recruiting a kid.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because Belgium at Potomac, that don't even,
Yeah.
I know this is a lot of people, diverse area, Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland, but still, Belgium.
Yeah. So here's I knew no one would believe I didn't recruit the kid. Okay. So I started to tell people, well, don't be pissed off with me. Your recruiting budget ain't as high as mine. So, like I really went to Belgium. But anyway, what happened was the kid was military. Dad was retired, and they were moving back to the area. And the kid got on YouTube and YouTube basketball teams in our area, and we popped up. And he said, "Dad, that's where I want to go." Well, it just so happened Dad moved right across the street from the school, and so 2015 came around. That was the year we were supposed to get our tails kicked, and we ended up losing in the state semifinals. We had won over 20 games. We were like 25-2, and lost in the state semifinals to Norview.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So then in 2015, we had a bunch of young kids at the end of the bench. And so we graduated the rest of those kids from 2014. And then 2016 is when we won it again. Everybody expected us to win it in 2017 because those kids were still pretty young. But they really, really came together. And again, the culture was set from 2014. So those kids didn't realize they were young and dumb. They had no idea. They just knew we're about to put this jersey on that says Potomac. We have a standard and we have to uphold this legacy. And they didn't want to be known as the kids who drove the car in the ditch.
Mm.
They went out and won a state championship. We beat Troy Mans and Elmore in the state championship.
I was at that game. That was
yeah. That was a crazy game. That was insane. So so our culture has been set. We've been blessed with a lot of talented kids, some great kids. I'm happy I still have a relationship with a lot of those kids. I still talk to them to this day from the past, and and our future's bright. We got a group this year that can contend for a state championship. We got a lot of work to do. We this whole COVID thing has kind of thrown a monkey wrench in things, and this group has a lot of work to do, but it has the potential to contend.
Absolutely, Coach. Look, just real quick, I want to ask you about the perception, I should say, that kids on that side of the Prince William County have, very similar to what I grew up when people talked about people from Shell Road and my part of Hampton, or when I lived in Eastern Newport News, where Mike and myself and Iverson are from. But there's a lot of good people there, and we got labeled just because of our demographics of where we resided. There are a lot of good people at Potomac High School, administrators, teachers, educators. There are a lot of kids there that have gone on to do great things. Can you just briefly talk about maybe the hypocrisy or the frustration you get with when you walk into a gym as a coach, a Black man that's very strong, prideful, confident, and your team plays physical, but yet within the game, talk about, the things you guys deal with, the label that's labeled on Potomac and your teams in that school, in that area.
Well, we're first of all, we're dealing with a reputation that's preceded us since the 90s. Potomac had got this reputation that we were a bad school with a bunch of bad kids, and it's followed us for whatever reason. The thing that frustrates me is if you're going to call us bad, you're going to say we're the bad school, then tell the good things that we do. Nobody wants to tell the story about how our 2014 team got 9 kids into college. And some went on to play professional. Some of them have graduated. Some of them are military. Every single one of those kids are productive citizens of society today. So Potomac has been it's a very unique place. It's very family oriented from the administration down, and it's recently changed. We've had some administration turnover, but we pride ourselves on keeping things in the family and being a part of that Potomac family. And that runs deep. Those waters run deep. I think we get a unfair rap right now. Our kids aren't any worse than any other school. I tell people, if you have a child that want to find trouble, they can find it wherever they go.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with Prince William County is there's this western side, there's this perception of the western side, and there's the perception of the eastern side. And that's extremely frustrating to me. It's extremely frustrating for our kids when, our kids, they see their school as one of the oldest schools in the county, and they claim they did renovations. They added on and put some new doors on, and all of a sudden we got renovations. Our kids walk in the lunchroom, they still got the old school fold out tables. They still got to walk through the lunch line like the old school. And then when I got to put those kids on the bus and I take them to the western side, to Colgan or Patriot or somewhere like that, they walk in their food court. Like we have a lunchroom, they have a food court. They have lockers in the food court for their cell phones so they can charge their phones, where our kids are trying to hide their cell phones so they don't get taken. The disparity is huge. And, the older I've gotten, the more I've paid attention to it. And I don't know what it's going to take to level the playing field, but I tell you this, our kids don't have a swimming pool in the school. I can tell you that, I think our kids deserve, just like the kids on the western side, deserve those amenities. I don't want to from them. I just want our kids to have the same amenities. I want our kids to have the same, we want our kids to have pride in their school. Well, give them a school that they can be prideful about. Give them amenities that they can be prideful about. Give them the same, the same situation, put them on the same playing field as everyone else, and give them the same experience that you're giving the western side of the county. That's all that we ask. And, to be honest with you, it doesn't appear to be happening. I mean, like I said, our kids are walking in the lunchroom, keeping their phones in their pocket. Their kids can take their phones out and put them in a locker and charge them, and it's just, you walk through, and it's beautiful, beautiful schools, something Prince William County should be proud of, but, we've got to put some things on this side of the county that our kids can be proud of as well.
I agree. And I worked throughout Prince William County, and I've been up here since the year 2000. And being a Tidewater guy, I noticed a difference right away. As a matter of fact, when I was dating my wife, she went to what is now Unity Reed. She went to Stonewall and was a standout track runner. And I saw Stonewall. And then when, Battlefield was being built and Patriot, you started to see, and that's still on the west side, and you on the east side, because I deal with all clientele. I saw the discrepancies that you mentioned, Coach, but you've still been able to empower your students mentally, physically, spiritually. They believe in you. You're an educator. You are a leader, and you have great insight, and people respect you immensely. And you had a leader, you had a mentor that you mentioned earlier, your AD.
Yes.
Talk about his impact and just what he means to you and how he's been able to just help you keep that focus without giving in to some of the hypocrisies that exist.
Well, unbeknownst to me, he later, once I had established myself and it was evident, it wasn't in over my head, he sat down and said, "Hey, it's something I want to tell you." I said, "I've never told you this before." He said, "But when we offered you this job, there were a lot of people that didn't want you to have this job. I got a lot of emails from people that were really upset with me for giving you this job. He was like, and I just want to thank you for making me right. And I didn't realize that, because I was a Potomac guy. I graduated from Potomac. I coached at Potomac. Who would want me to be the coach? Well, there were quite frankly, there were a lot of people who did not want me to have that job. So I later found that out. But the thing that I have to say about him is, I'll tell this, this is one of the advices that I'll give new coaches or any coach. If your administration is not right, you're not going to win. You don't have an administration that supports you and will fight for you. You're not going to win on a consistent basis. Let me put it that way. You're not going to sustain the consistency that we have, or I've been able to have. And it's simply because of my administration. My first principal was Tony Jones. Second was Mark Maloney, and then Mike Wright, who was a Richmond guy. And those three guys were as supportive as any principals could be, through good and bad. And Lord knows I had my share of mistakes. And my AD, my mentor, he afforded me those mistakes. He knew me making a mistake was important to my development and my growth. He didn't micromanage me. He advised me. And it's two totally different things. I would always run ideas by him. I would always ask his opinion. And at the end of the day, he never, ever said to me, this is what you should do. It was always, well, you might want to think about this, or think about the repercussions if you do that. He gave me the leeway to think on my own, make mistakes, and while holding me accountable for my mistakes, he always used it as a teaching tool. There's not a lot of guys like that anymore. Now school is a business, and unfortunately, the clientele is the parents are the clientele, and you know how it is.
Yeah.
It always wins.
Yeah.
And I've had parents that walked in there and said, "Hey, I'm not happy with him. He ain't playing my son. He ain't doing this. He ain't doing that." And his response to them was always, "I've noted your concern. Thank you." And most of the time, it never got back to me. He never even brought it to me. And that's kind of unheard of.
Wow.
Yeah, right. That was huge. So I was able to coach and not worry about that type of stuff, which was important and which is very vital in my young career. So I was able to go on and establish myself. And, I still talk to him to this day. He's a very, very high, Bill Stearns, that's his name. He's super intelligent. He's a great human being. And I wouldn't be here without him. I really wouldn't.
Coach, I listen to you talk. I love listening to you talk. I do. I think, you have a great humble spirit, because looking at your resume and, 4-time regional coach of the year, 2-time state coach of the year, you coached 3 of your sons with no daddy ball, no incidents, no allegations, and the pressure you felt, especially once you took over for a guy, a legend who had won 77 straight, which is still, when you said it, I was like, that's crazy. And then you created your own standard where the expectation is now the same. Before I met you, I still knew of you. I knew Potomac basketball. I was like, okay, yeah, Potomac's gonna be in it. When you coach against my good friend Troy Mans and Bird, and I seen you beat some of those teams from 757. I was like, yo, this guy is a coach, Potomac, 703. I shouted you guys out, because the brand of basketball y'all play is great. But with all that being said, it's a 2-part question. I'll ask the first one and I'll let you answer. Then we'll wrap up with your final thoughts. What are your regrets? A lot of men and women I've interviewed, they struggle with that question because it means you have to have that moment of clarity. You have to be transparent. And when, I mentioned when you're alone with your thoughts, because when I've interviewed people, they say, hey, I never knew this about myself till I experienced this, and I wish I could go back. We got to be able to live with regrets. I have, you have, but whether it's as a coach, as a father, as a mentor to so many young men and even young ladies educating, what are some of the things you look back saying, you know what, I learned from this because I regret that I didn't do this? What is one that comes to mind?
Honestly, one of my biggest regrets that I have is I wish I was a better coach for those guys my first 4 years. Um, I think coaches go through three phases in their career. I think the first phase they go through is when you first become a head coach, you want to win at all costs. You just want to win, and that's where I was. I had the pressure of winning, and I was coming behind a guy with 77 game winning streak. That's all I kept hearing. So I just wanted to win. Well, a lot of those relationships were neglected. And I just wish if I could go back and do it all over again, those first 4 years would look a lot different, I think. I would have probably put more time into those kids, those relationships than I did winning. So that's what I would have to say my biggest regret is as a coach in my coaching career.
Thank you. And a lot of people, oh no, I'm good, but I can respect that answer. And with that being said, Coach, we've come to the final part of your legacy spotlight where we end with your final thoughts. And to bridge off that answer about your regrets, just tell these viewers that are going to watch this, what has the game of basketball, your playing career, your coaching career thus far, and also the relationship you form, all the wonderful families you've helped on and off the court, your life lessons, the mistakes, the success, the failures, what has it taught you? And what will you tell the young and upcoming players and coaches to get to where you've been and to even exceed your success?
I'll go back to the question prior to the first thing I would tell coaches, you're going to go through three phases of coaching. Number one, you're going to win. We just talked about that. You want to win at all costs. The second phase I think a coach is going to go through is he's going to realize winning is not the most important thing. It's winning the right way. That's going to be their second phase of coaching. And then when they become a really good coach, and I'm not talking about wins and losses, when they become a really good coach, they're going to go through their third and final phase as a coach. It's going to be the relationships. They're going to realize the relationships are the most important thing about all of this. And as coaches, I would tell them, don't neglect those relationships, because there was a time in my career I did. I just wanted to win. I wanted to win. And those kids deserve so much more than that. They deserve a coach with compassion. They deserve a coach with empathy. They deserve a coach that loved them. They deserve a coach that listened to them more than talked to them. And I don't think our kids, my first 4 years, got that. So that would be my piece to tell coaches, those three phases. And then finally, loyalty. I think loyalty's is getting lost in this whole coaching profession, because of social media. It's so me driven now. Everything people, majority, generally speaking, puts out, it's about them. If you look on, I told a guy the other night, somebody tweeted me and said, well, Coach, you need to start giving us, y'all old heads need to start giving us young dudes some advice. And I replied, I said, well, you got, in so many words, you got to want the advice. You got to want to listen to us. I said, but how many times do you go on Twitter and see a young coach asking for advice? He's usually giving advice. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I would say, loyalty. Just, if you're going to be assistant coach, be loyal. You know, be loyal to your head coach, be loyal to your program. And even if, you know, you're not going to agree on everything, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but, you know, if you're loyal and the head coach is loyal to you, you grow, you develop, you know, you start preparing for being a head coach. And then that head coach, his job becomes easier if he's got loyal guys around him. So that would be my advice to coaches, to players, um, especially young guys like entering. I would, and this is even middle school kids. Surround yourself with people who have the same interests that you have, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be basketball. If you're a basketball player and you want to go play college basketball, then surround yourself with people who want to go to college, you know, and that's going to increase your odds of getting there. You know, just so many times I always see where, you know, you have kids with great aspirations, great dreams, but they don't surround themselves with people who have those same aspirations and dreams, and they wind up falling victim to the other party's aspirations.
Yep.
You know, it ain't always good.
Great point.
Yeah, so I would say to the young guys, because I think kids work now. You know, we can. There's no, you know, we don't need to tell kids you need to work and you need to put the time in. I think kids are doing that. You know, I think kids are training, they're working their tails off. Um, you know, and I think kids academically now are a lot more sound, a lot more conscious academically. I just think it's the social piece that we have to advise them on, whether it's social media or just socially. Um, you know, surround yourself with some good people, some people that are going to challenge you to be a good person, and some people that are going to help you get to the place you want to be and not hinder you. And that could be a girlfriend, you know, or a boyfriend. You know, you don't want a girlfriend or a boyfriend that, you know, that don't have aspirations and dreams. Not that they're a bad person, but you know, I always tell my boys, my three that played for me, you know, if you have to have a girlfriend, at least have a girlfriend that wants to go to college if that's what you want to do. If you want to go to the military, try to find some friends in the ROTC. You know, I mean, it's all relevant, you know, but just surround yourself with people with like-minded people that have the same dreams and aspiration you do.
Well said, man. I agree, Coach. Coach, that's on point. And with that being said, I thank you, man. Give it up for Coach Keith Honore, a great, great guest, man, and wise man, giving us wise feedback and words of wisdom. Coach, on behalf of Vicktory Life, I thank you for jumping on, man. This has been a lot of fun. It's very insightful. As I've told you on and off air, I love listening to you talk. You just drop great feedback, man, and I just appreciate the fact that despite your successes, you remain humble. You're
I
Potomac's head
appreciate it.
man, but you also believe in the family approach, which started back in the days of Louisiana. For
Mhm.
those watching, we appreciate your support, man. And if you live in the area and once this whole COVID thing gets squared away and contained, I hope you get a chance to check out what Potomac is doing over there on Route One. The basketball programs, great kids, great brand of basketball, and just a phenomenal head man and Coach Keith Honore. Um, like I say every episode to everybody supporting Vicktory Life and even to Coach Keith's fans and supporters, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you have a great positive impact. You leave a great legacy. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.